to start out with a very quick round of introductions from our esteemed panelists. If you could just give us a really brief introduction of who are you, where are you, and how long have you been managing managers? And also tell us something interesting. Tell us about what were some of the early lessons or mistakes you made when you first started managing folks? So that's a lot to get into an intro, but I am confident in all of you. I'll start with, let's see, I'll start with you, Robert. You happen to be first on my screen, so please tell us more about yourself.
Certainly, yeah. So yeah, my name's Robert Fernandes. I've been in the industry for about 25 years now, the last 10 of which have been all at Netflix. I'm in the Open Connect area, which is our basically CDN streaming delivery at the edge. So basically, if you're an advocate of Netflix, you click the play button, you start getting your experience. We make sure that delivery happens and is done well. So as far as my journey, started off here as an IC in that area, kind of, working on the engineering side of things in the kind of configuration management observability space. That scope has just grown. So that turned into tech lead, then leading a team in that space. And then, so domains grew, we went global, we grew more parts of the business we were operating within. That turned into multiple teams, and that needed more delegation of leadership. So it's been a singular leader of leads. That's happened within the last couple of years. I would say one of the biggest challenges for me in coming to lead leaders, as opposed to just ICs, trying to find how to make that a success and delegate leading, as opposed to delegating how to implement and how to execute, figuring out how to enable people and unblock people who do lead has been a thing. I would say also secondarily, letting people navigate how they can move back and forth. Once you go to leadership, it's not a one where you're always going up, always going further. People need to go back and apply some more technical skills or move back and forth. So letting people find their journey, find their space, I've learned is very critical to the success of leaders.
Okay, thank you so much, Robert. Next, Jamie, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and any early lessons learned or mistakes you made as you started managing managers?
Yes, we'd love to. Hello, happy Friday, everyone. So my name is Jamie Smith Webb. I'm the CTO at Numan. Numan are a digital healthcare provider in the UK. So I'm based in East London, in the UK. I've been in tech for about 20 odd years, managing managers for about just over a decade. So plenty of mistakes to kind of dig into for this panel. So I guess early days of my journey into managing technical managers, I think I've made a very classic mistake to begin with of trying to manage managers in the frame of my management style. So I expected them to behave like me, to talk like me, to communicate like me. That went pretty badly to begin with. But I guess the more interesting one, the mistake I made after that, I swung the pendulum the other way. I thought, well, if they're not going to behave like me and be like me, I need to give them complete freedom. So I tried that for a while, gave them very kind of vague outcomes, and thought the best thing to do is leave them to their own devices and find their own path. That obviously led to some pretty bad outcomes as well. So it was about trying to kind of dial in that delegation that Robert mentioned, try to figure out how to give them the right sort of alignment, and for each individual figuring out what style of management was best. So my mistake was really the pendulum swing of too much and then too little direction.
Okay. And Elliot, tell us a little bit about yourself and any early lessons learned or mistakes in managing managers.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Elliot Franford. I'm a director of software at Whoop. Been there 4 years as of, I think, yesterday. Similar story to Robert. I joined as an IC, went to the tech lead, then group lead, and now director. So kind of, I think at each level, I made different kind of mistakes. So IC to tech lead, it's kind of like you have to work on that player coach mindset and, know when it's time to play and know when it's time to coach. And then make sure you're not, accidentally taking opportunities or growth opportunities for others. And then going up to that group lead level of like, going across a few different teams and managing tech leads who might be their first time. Similarly ran into my style might not be their style. And a lot of them, are first time as well. So they might not even know their style. So trying to help guide that path a little bit and try to lead by example. And early mistakes both there and now as a director is, kind of knowing, when to take the training wheels off and let them try themselves. And like be very resistant to jump in and help all the time, like let them have a little bit of struggle, an appropriate amount to get through on their own before be like, okay, like I've seen something like this before, let me help you, and kind of knowing when that boundary is.
Yeah. Okay, well, I look forward to hearing more details about all of those experiences you all just described. And you mentioned, Elliot, you just talked about, starting out in a sort of player coach kind of management role. That's a nice segue into one of the first questions I would like to ask you all, which is about the right, quote, right mix of technical skills versus management skills for technical managers. And in particular, I often find that technical managers sometimes worry about letting their technical skills atrophy, or they miss writing code, or they wonder if they're technical enough for the role. How do you gauge what is technical enough for a given role at a given company at a particular stage in its time? And this time I'll go in reverse order. I'll start with you, Elliot.
Yeah, I love that you added the point about at different stages. So I joined Whoop, 4 years, we were still really small. The engineering team, was a couple handfuls of people. And we were all just kind of picking stuff off a roadmap and trying our best to execute. And then as we grew, we're like, we should really be more product focused. So we developed into these little product teams with one person who was, had a good record of delivery and like energy for their team, becoming a technical lead. And then they kind of had that like 70-30 IC time versus manager time. And so like one of the things that you'll kind of see is like, are they actually like taking care of the other people when something comes up? Are they diving in? So like having the right mix, I think at that stage, sometimes you really, you might have a limited runway and you just have to execute. So sometimes it's okay to be a little bit more on that side. But as you mature and grow and you have a more senior engineering team, you might start bringing in people who are, more junior or maybe their first job. And then that coaching piece is a little more important. You'll also find that people who are more senior, they don't want to do the same stuff they've been doing every single day, like, writing simple APIs. That's not a huge challenge. Sometimes helping somebody else learn all that is. And then, as the system team and company grows, you run into scalability issues. And then those are more interesting problems for them to be helping on anyways. So I think at each like kind of stage, it does change and shift. So there are times where you might just need to execute. There are other times where you might need to just kind of err on coaching. Like if you're trying to inflate the team really quickly, it's important to make sure you get that coaching culture right. Or else you'll have a bunch of people kind of running around like, what do we do? It's really interesting. And now, where we are, like we've matured a bit. So there's an interesting situation now where we have managers or people who are technical leads and group leads who are very deep in their domain, but maybe not another. So you might have a mobile, like a person who's like an iOS or an Android engineer who's actually leading a team with backend engineers who also have to worry about scalability and things. So my job there is to kind of help make sure they're equipped to understand how things work so they can, participate, drive, and understand the questions, and then create an environment where they're like, hey, I don't understand this. Can you help me? And like, we're really fortunate to have just a great team where people are very quick to jump in and help each other out.
Jamie, what about you? How do you determine what is the right mix of those skills in different situations, different types of companies? And I'm especially curious, how do you tell if a manager is over-indexing on their technical skill?
So I guess the first bit of kind of how you tell whether they're kind of the right mix. I think there's probably, for me, it's very similar to what Elliot was saying, there's like almost like 3 levels for me. One, what does the team need? How does the team operate? Are they dysfunctional? Are they happy? Do they have some kind of strong technical direction? Then there's, I guess there's an element not to forget of the managers that you manage are a team as well. And seeing them as a team and trying to understand what sort of skills are needed in that management team as well. So there's like the team, the kind of management layer, And then exactly as Elliot was saying, the kind of strategy aspect of it, like where are you in your journey? Where are you trying to get to? What kind of skills are needed? So I think balancing those three for me start to give you some indications of what you might need. Very much so if you're looking for transformation, if you're growing at scale, what are the biggest challenges you've got? Are they technical? In which case you'd want to make sure your management team are strong in that sense and they can give kind of strong direction. I think that's where kind of I would look at. And if it's the second part of the question you asked was around how can you tell if they're over-indexing?
Or under-indexing for that matter.
Yeah. I think there's probably, I would say there may be two or three things I'd look at. And again, I've missed these a lot in my kind of early days, and it's taken me some while to figure these out. But one is around decision-making. And what I mean by that is both technical and non-technical decision-making. Is it clear what decisions are being made? Are they being made at pace? And do the team understand them? If you're over-indexing in technical skills, I've seen managers who will just make decisions themselves and just push on. And the team don't really know what's going on, don't understand it. That's one thing I'd look at. And the other more practical one I've seen time and time again, and I've done it, and certainly when I was kind of younger in my career, is time management. Start to see if someone's really over-indexing the technical aspect. I have seen in the past people get really deep into problem solving almost within the team sometimes as an IC and ignore the kind of management aspect of the role. And so you'll find they'll turn up to meetings not prepared. They won't have done the kind of boring but important aspects of leadership and management. The one-to-ones will start to slip. And you can start just to pick up a bit of a theme of maybe they're not taking the management aspect of the role as seriously as they should.
And before we move on to you, Robert, I want to quickly address a question in the chat. Someone asked what over and under indexing means. Over indexing would mean overemphasizing that particular thing or relying too much on it. And under indexing would be the opposite, like not paying enough attention to that particular thing. Robert, what about you? How do you figure out what's the right mix of skills in various situations and stages of your company?
Yeah, I think the key thing is kind of already mentioned was, understand the mission of the team and what stage of maturity the team is in. Like, are they a very senior, already relatively capable team where they really need, disambiguation or context and they can go execute? Or is it like, hey, this is a growing team and emerging and it's younger and they need someone to step in and they want someone almost, like pair with or be coached or like whatever else. So I think those are some, it depends on, what is the composition and need of the team? And so you need to understand that from your perspective to help then make that determination, I think is pretty big. I would say the other thing, especially in the, what's technical enough, because I know that's one of the hardest things as an engineer is like, take your hands off the keyboard, step back of like, my contribution doesn't have to be on like the code that I'm writing or the system that I built or the service that I put into production. It could be like enabling the team to do that. So to me, it's looking at how enabling is that leader being. Technical enough means the people within the space and within the team feel heard, feel understood, that leader knows how to measure the success of the technical work that's happening. Like, so you need to be able to evaluate what's going on, know that good decisions are being made, know that quality things are being done. But, you can make that assessment that shows you have the technical prowess to understand and navigate that space, even without making, like direct impact of physically still building something. So I think that's pretty huge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you. I see we're starting to get some questions popping in. Feel free to keep those coming. We are going to save 10 to 15 minutes at the end to answer questions. And if some of them come up and they seem particularly in line and related to stuff we're talking about, I may slot them in before then. I'd like to segue to a next question. And I want to start with you, Jamie, because this relates to something you mentioned. About giving managers goals that are either too broad or too specific. As a managers, your success is based on the success of those teams and if they're meeting their goals. So how do you set goals with managers? Are there frameworks that you use, or tell us how you go about that?
So I've used I've used various ones over the 10 years. There's a really good tool that if you've not used the site called Rework, Google wrote a site called Rework. They've got a tool in there called the Grow Framework, which is really useful for setting goals. And it kind of looks at what goals they're trying to achieve in their words, where they are. So recognizing kind of what position they're in, what opportunities there are around them, and then you kind of build a plan to kind of close that gap. More lately, at Numan, we used to use, although we moved away from it recently, a system called EOS, which I hadn't heard of before, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And they focus on things called rocks, pebbles, and sand. And it's the kind of the progression of the really big rocks you're trying to move, the pebbles that are kind of almost monthly, and the sand, which is the kind of small things you do day to day. And those, the fidelity of those, like how closely you align them and how kind of small you set them, in my experience, depend very much largely on the experience of the manager. So you could sit there and debate what kind of the monthly goals should be, and then you have a discussion, very much like almost like a delegation discussion. Say, like, how do you think you could get there? What do you think we could do to kind of attain that? And likely heard from more experienced managers, they'll have some instincts, and they'll have some kind of thinking to do, talk to the team, figure out and come back. With the more junior managers, the ones that need a bit more support, I find myself finding opportunities in that to say, why don't we work on this together? And we can pair on this, and you can get a benefit from my experience without me overpowering the situation. So you tell me where I can help. I'll spot a few things in the kind of goal setting, and that's not quite working. So it's a mixture of, you start with the big goals, and as you kind of understand the experience, you can tailor your almost specificity as you kind of look at their experience.
Okay. Elliot, what about you? How do you go about setting goals with the managers who report to you?
Yeah, it's a fun question. And I think I've gone through a few different permutation of, SMART goals. Right now, organizationally, we're doing something that kind of looks like OKRs, coming down and mapping those. But with my individual managers, and they're starting to do this with their direct reports, there's a book I read, When They Win, You Win, and it has a really interesting like career action plan where you kind of like, look out into the future and say, hey, like, what do you think you want to do? Like, what's that moment in your career you're going to look back on and reflect as like, yeah, that was the best. And then you think of like, okay, what is that role? What are the traits of that role? And then you kind of work backwards and you say, what kind of things do we need to work on to get you this, and that? And then once you have those, my job is to kind of go and say, okay, like, let me look at the organization and see what we're doing. Like, what opportunities can I give you here? Like, say you want to be a CTO, you have to get more comfortable, speaking with people at the executive level. So you being in those meetings, like to discuss things like, that's going to be really huge for you on that journey. And then it's also kind of like that whole aspect of like, look out into the industry, like what other, like, say we don't have an opportunity and they really want it. Like, it opens like an honest conversation where then, you're setting your goals, you're trying to meet it. And then it's like, hey, like, there's actually something really great out there. So like, I'm not trying to push you away, but you should always be thinking about, opportunities here, opportunities like out in the world, and then work with them to kind of action on those, like specifically for like the team delivering features and things. We have this thing that we just tried out. Our new CTO, Jamie, is awesome. We have this framework that we're trying called like a Whoop map, where we kind of map out quarter by quarter for the year, like what we want to release. And then it gives everybody like a really good like framework to see, hey, here's what everybody's marching towards. And then people very clearly on each team and all the line managers and people understand like, I need to get this done for this time. And they can also see their dependencies as well.
Robert, what about you? How do you set goals with your managers and their teams?
Yeah, I'm gonna come at this from like two different angles. One is I think, there are certain KPIs, whatever else, there's base things of like, what are our cloud costs? What is our like, code quality look like? What are our build times like? There's a very measurable, tangible thing. And there's a lot of different ways to like come across, hey, we look very tactically at what we're doing and make sure we're on track and the lines are moving like the right direction. Another huge thing from our side that maybe is somewhat unique to this conversation is a lot of the work we do is enabling internal processes in the business. It's like, internal support, internal tools, internal productivity, and like, from those kind of things, you often have to come from a very different angle of like, let's assess what customer success or partner success or stakeholder success looks like, and work with those folks to say like, hey, what does the sentiment look like there? What is the headcount savings there? What efficiencies does the business get? And you actually work with, cross-functional teams to kind of assess like, hey, what are we doing and how are we impacting the business? So like really getting that cross-functional business input to help like, bring that. So then you not only have goal setting, but you also have very much like, hey, people can understand why we're doing the work, who we're doing it for, what we're doing. And when you have that kind of, direction and vision, you can send people, they can start to then see and assess of like, oh, what I'm doing is affecting here, to drive towards that. So yeah, to kind of sum that up is really working with partners and stakeholders of like, how are you impacting them? What goals do they have that you're helping them meet? Like I said, especially from that internal productivity support type of role.
Okay. And I have a follow-up question that I'll just throw out to the room. So chime in, anyone who's keen on this one. So if a manager or team is not meeting the goals you've set with them, how do you tell if you've got an inexperienced manager or a manager who's struggling versus a really strong manager who's just been dealt a particularly rough situation and is actually making the best of it?
I can maybe get started. Quite a few years ago now, when I first started managing managers, I read I don't know if you've seen it, as Google did a thing called Project Oxygen, where they got rid of all the managers years and years and years ago, and it went badly wrong, and they reinstated them. And they looked at, when they reinstated the managers, what were the teams that excelled and what were the traits of the managers in those teams. And that has really helped me understand this situation, looking at that. I think we've got a list of 10. And the ones that really resonated with me were around things like communication and decision-making and collaboration. So communication, are they being clear with their team? Are they making it really very crystal clear what the alignment is and how they're chasing the goal, the larger goal, the company goal, the quarterly goal? And are they making balanced decisions? Are they helping the team unblock themselves? Now, if they're doing those kind of things right, in my experience, you tend to have a good manager who might need some more support, or the team might need to be reconfigured or thought through, or the team themselves might need more support. But it's those aspects, that kind of list of 10 things would be the things I'd look at, less so necessarily the outcomes of the team. Because I think you can get lost. There can be factors that are way beyond the direct manager's kind of ability to affect. There might be dependencies, might be all manner of things, but I'd look for those kind of 10 things most readily.
Anybody else want to bite on that one? And as a reminder, if you've gotten the question is, how do you suss out if you've got a manager who is inexperienced or struggling, if they're not meeting their goals, versus a really strong, experienced manager who just had a really tough set of goals that maybe were going to be difficult to achieve no matter what?
Yeah, I can chime in, I suppose. I think one thing with like the managers that we have, being so product driven, like the people that we hire, generally, we look for ones who are, really mission driven. So, if I look at a team and, they're not necessarily excited or engaging with each other and, participating actively in like all aspects of development, that can be a sign to me that, the manager who's kind of supposed to be the glue and like creating the times and places for that to happen, that maybe the team's just not, gelling, and maybe that's one reason. And that can be a little bit of inexperience there. I mentioned it on my teaser was like agency as well. Like, does the team actually like, are they not getting things done because they're just not set up to have it? So that's kind of like that, delta difficult goal with like, hey, figure all these things out. And here's so many unknowns and good luck. Like we want it soon. That's not a fun place to be. So like, are they even set up for success in the first place? And then I love like the idea of like, execution. So like when those other two things are going well and like, the team is trying to get things done, are they able to deliver reasonably close to their estimations? Like, and over time, are they getting better and better? And like, that shows me that, someone is doing a good job there. The opposite is also true. If the team is estimating and they're way, way off time and time again, they probably don't have someone in that leadership role there who can really help them, make decisions, like research and kind of go and understand like the problem space before they take off.
Robert, any thoughts on that question for you?
I would say the thing I tend to look at is, what is there a historical trend or pattern with that leader or with that team? Do a back look. Is there any other team you can say? Did they partner? Was there a success in the past? Like, if it's a brand new forming team or brand new forming org, that's a little more difficult to tease out. But I mean, look for the patterns, look for commonalities. If it seems like something was good in the past, was it not? Try to suss those things out, get a broader perspective, instead of just being oh, this is wrong now, how do we fix? I would also say, hey, if it's a newer leader coming in and you need to assess that, like, whoa, did we make the wrong choice? Are they a good leader or are they not? I think a key thing to indicate is, do they understand the culture? Do they understand the mission, understand the vision? Like, were they set up to come in and say like, oh, this is kind of what we expected? Or is it like, someone who's coming in trying to change the culture or like be too much or be too heavy handed because they think they have the answers? It's like, what does that level of collaboration leadership, look like within that team? What is that environment? I think can tell a lot of like, are they leading or are they trying to manage and like, force goals, like to come to fruition or whatever else? So like, I don't know. I think those are some key things to look at.
Okay. This next question is perhaps really closely related, but the idea comes from a recent blog post from Will Larson, where he asked this question: how do you foster execution on teams that you indirectly manage? And when I thought about that in my own life, what that really means for me is, how do I understand what's actually happening on the teams that I don't directly manage? I also went out to the group as well. So jump in if you have thoughts on that one.
Yeah, happy to get started again. There's actually, if you don't subscribe to it, there's a newsletter by a guy called Luca Rossi, and he wrote about this really recently, and it hit me quite hard because really interesting take on this question. And he was looking at a acronym, ETA called it, which was developer experience, engineering tempo, and business alignment. And he kind of drew a line to say, on the one side, it's very team and engineer centric, so developer experience, and the other side is very business centric. And his view is having some sense in the teams of how well those three things are going, and whether you're satisfied that that's the kind of right direction you should be going in, stands you in pretty good stead for good understanding of how well the team are executing. If we've got really good alignment, if they're able to kind of deliver value at a sustainable pace, and if they're enjoying the experience, that tends to indicate where you can get the information that things are going well. But I'll have to point out that the mistake I've made certainly is trying to look at metrics, trying to understand this question through just purely numbers. And obviously that leads to pretty weird outcomes as well. So honestly, just taking the time to talk to the team, ask them questions like, what's not working? And if they've got a really long list, they're focused and thinking, well, I want to fix these things. And if they're not getting to fix them, there's something wrong there. And also the kind of killer question for me often is like, why are you doing this right now? Like, what's your goal? And again, if they've got a clear view of, well, our big goal is this, and we're aligned to this goal, and this is why we're going to execute this, and this is why these results matter, is a good indication that they're focused on how to achieve outcomes rather than just kind of meandering through a list of backlogs.
Gotcha. Someone is asking in the chat, what's the name of that newsletter? Could you repeat that for folks?
Yeah, it's called Refactoring by a guy called Luca Rossi.
Okay, thank you. Elliot or Robert, any thoughts on that? How do you understand what's actually happening on teams when you're not there? You're not directly managing them.
I can go. So I think I'm fortunate with I grew with my company. So I've been there 4 years. I've gotten to know a lot of the new leaders and new teams and things that we're doing. And we're also in person the majority of the time. So I do have that fortune to just walk and be like, hey, what is this? Explain it to me. I just don't understand. So I think like we have a very big culture of, you know, being like honest and open. So part of that is just you can have that conversation. You know, we do have that alignment thing I discussed before about like, you know, quarter by quarter, people kind of know what they're going. And if you're one of those, you know, teams that has multiple dependencies, and you're probably going to get, you know, poked a lot, like, hey, how's everything going? To kind of avoid that, one thing that, you know, we've done is, you know, when the project, you know, gets started, let team like say like, you know, one of our like team is doing like our ML ops, and they're going to be providing like some data dump to one of our other teams who's building like a user experience around that. And they don't actually know where that data is coming from or how. You know, you just get them in the room, let them chat about how it's going to go, understand each other, what they're doing, get that empathy, and then let them chat it out. And then I get to just observe how that's going, and then just kind of check in when I need to, or if like, you know, I have an understanding of where things are and experience to kind of know roughly where they should be at different times, that I can then just kind of like, hey, like nudge, how's this going? Like, do you need any help with this? Do you have what you need? And then like to both teams, not just the one that like I'm managing. Like, are they giving you enough information about what they actually want? And that's been really useful for me. And I think that's just, you know, it's a benefit of having everybody, you know, all together like that.
What about you, Robert? And I'll tweak that question a little bit and even say, how much do you want to know what's going on with teams that you don't directly manage?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I would say there can be delegation is good. You know, I would say there's a lot of success, especially in technical leadership, of, hey, you know, maybe a more hands-off approach, especially, you know, kind of senior tenured, kind of well-developed, well-established teams. But I think getting too hands-off, like there's a balance there, like of just being like, oh, I just have a trust there and I've set the big, you know, high-level context, and then I'm going to kind of just step back and like let them go. Like, you should be able to help understand of like, are reasonable expectation as goals being set? How are those other teams that, you know, the leaders that you're leading, how are they setting them? Are they doing it in a reasonable fashion? What is their approach like? So that tight collaboration of knowing and understanding, having an opinion maybe on like how things are being set, so we know we're measuring the right things, we're like looking for the right outcomes. Like, you know, you should be involved in that process. So it's like, you know, having an informed opinion on how that whole framework works, it is important. And I'm going to harp on a similar thing. You'll sense a theme, and it's a very Netflix thing of openness, feedback, transparency, approachability. Like, it's super important. Like, I mean, communication matters. The blog post there, link, you know, mentions skip levels. I think a lot of people, those are so critical to like how we operate, of like building that trust with, you know, just the one layer below, and say, hey, how are you feeling about this? What are you seeing? What are the challenges? Especially people who are well established or been, you know, finding those key talent, those key players that like you can really lean into is amazingly critical. Equally so, I think, you know, you start to get to this, oh, director and like, you know, people skip level are like, oh, that person's too busy. That person's too, making it like a clear, look, I have an open door policy. Like, please, if you have something to say, please come say it. You know, the health of the org, how it's well functioning is what we're here to do as leaders. So, you know, please feel free to come to us and tell us if you think something is amiss or could be improved or like whatever else. I mean, of course, leverage direct leadership, but even one level up, like just having that open style of communication, I think is a big factor to success.
I'll circle back with you, Elliot and Jamie, and give you a chance to talk about that little tweak I made. How much do you want to know about what's going on in those teams that you don't directly manage? Or how much do you actually need to know about what's going on in those teams?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. I think going back to the theme of how many mistakes I've made, I've definitely made a few mistakes there of getting too deep, of being too close to the teams, and then it becomes a little bit difficult with the people that you manage to help them get the space to kind of lead the way they want to. So I'd say it kind of depends. I think that it's where it's worked well for me, expectations have been really clear. We've taken the time to say, here's what I expect of you in your role, and here's what you can expect of me. And one of the expectations is that I will, talk to your team and not necessarily to kind of try and debug your management style, but to figure out how things are going. And if they'll tell me things they won't tell you, and if I'm making the right choices and I'm communicating the right way. And so there's an element of kind of sniffing out things that you'll find. So if you're talking to a team and they're hesitant and they're being a little bit difficult in terms of they're not really telling you much, then you might ask a few more questions. Equally so, they might kind of reveal to you how things are going and they're not very happy, and then you're kind of inclined to have a look. So I would say there's a base level of expectation setting that is legitimate and totally fine for skip levels and understanding what things are going on, as long as the communication is there to say, I think we found a problem here. I'm not sure what's going on here. Can we look at it together? Or I'd like to highlight this to you. Can you go and look at it yourself and tell me what you think is going on? So it's that level of kind of trust, I would say, and expectation setting is really key. And from that, you can kind of figure out how you diagnose problems.
Yeah, from my perspective, I think everything these two have said is amazing. What could I add? I think one thing that comes to my mind that I'm trying to get better at, like I'm still relatively new to the role of director, is the context of strategy, and how deep to go. I think that can be tough. So like, I don't necessarily need to know all the nitty gritty on everything, but I do have a genuine like passion and care, like what people are building, not to have my opinions matter in it, but just I think it's awesome and I want to know. And it's always better to have more of that understanding of kind of like, it's an organization, it's like a living organism. Things are, being built and going out, and teams are like working hard on things. And I think it's always nice to kind of have, this also is the size of the company is a little smaller than Netflix, but like, where like I can still have those touch points with people, like it's still smaller. I can go over and have that understanding. And I think having that context is good, because when one of my teams sets off, or I have a skip level, or a manager goes, hey, we're trying to do this thing. I'm like, oh, so-and-so over here they were doing something else like that. Maybe you guys should just link up and chat through and see what you can get from it. So I think like, I personally like having the context. But that's not for me to dive deep and like, push my opinions on things. It's just to have an understanding.
Gotcha. You mentioned strategy, and that's a nice segue into one of the next questions I have, which is, what are some really concrete tactical ways you recommend either the managers who report to you make time for strategy, or for you yourself? Because there's always a million things to do, especially if you're a new manager or a new director. So how do you recommend people carve out time?
Yeah, I could start, and then I think we'll probably go around a few times here. So I'm, again, like pretty new to this space and this way of thinking, but with my managers, I have a weekly just touch point with all of them, similar to like a one-on-one individually. We also kind of all get together and discuss what's going on and what they're seeing, how things are going. And then, it doesn't take long to kind of be like, oh, here's some common threads of like, things that are maybe a little challenging now. And like strategically, we might need to start thinking about how we're going to solve that, in the future. It could be, internal tooling, it could be developer experience, it could be, investing in new technologies. Maybe like we're getting to like a scaling, tipping point with certain things that, we need to kind of pull a bunch of folks in to figure out. But that's one way that I do make time. And I also just, I have it's kind of silly, but like people who see my laptop and hear all these meetings pop up, I leave myself little meetings, recurring meetings on different days of the week to ask myself different questions to think of it. So I have like a strategy thing in the morning, which reminds me that, hey, think back, like, do you have any notes strategically to update? And I have like a notebook with that. And then just other kind of like little touch points throughout the week for myself to remind like, hey, it's also now your job to think of these things. So that's just one thing that I do.
Cool. And do you keep those meetings with yourself? Because I do that too. And then half the time I don't actually keep them.
Yeah, I think, it's not so much like I put myself in a room, put on like, headphones and just like do something. A lot of it, it's, I do listen to the Super Managers podcast. I tons of different blogs and things come in. So it's the time for me to kind of like reflect and be like, okay, that time could be look out at the industry for other people in a similar space to us. go through, I mean, I read the Netflix engineering blog and other things like that all the time. But like, it's kind of get more information. So like the strategy doesn't always necessarily mean that I have to produce something. It can be, also like information gathering. So I can provide more context to people so then they can think about things and then come back with their own ideas on like strategically what we should be doing. So, I generally keep it. It could be coffee. It could be, just talking with somebody else. Like I'm fortunate to have another director on the platform side, and he and I are, both good friends, and he has tons of insights, and I've just learned a bunch from him. So we bounce that time off each other as well.
Cool. Jamie or Robert, how do you help the managers that report to you make time to step back and think strategically, or how do you do that yourself?
So a few years ago, I was kind of in a role where it was needed to kind of think strategy, and I just kept burning out. I kept trying to do all things all the time. So what that led me to do, a very practical thing that I did, and I had a coach at the time who helped me understand how to do this. And it sounds really kind of a little bit boring, but it really worked. I did like a calendar audit, but more than that, almost like an energy audit. And I went through all my meetings and kind of color coded them. But once I'd done that, I understood where I was spending my time. The next bit was the most important bit for me, which was look at the role I was playing in those meetings. And I had been at this company a few years, and I'd almost like inherited a load of meetings and a load of things I did. And by listing out what role I was playing in those meetings, it helped me understand where I should be almost like passing the torch to others around me to kind of do those meetings. And I could free myself up not to do the prep work for them and just turn up or just read the minutes afterwards. And it started to really define my role much better, where I said, where am I spending my energy? And the other thing I did, very similar to Elliot, is I looked at when during the week am I most thoughtful or most productive? And for me, it's in the mornings. And so I spent some time there, blocking out time, the very similar to Elliot, saying and putting in questions in that meeting to say, and there was two styles of questions I used. One was why, to help me kind of layer up the strategy. So if we're saying, we needed to consider a piece of work or look at a new feature, look at new technology, I kept asking myself why until I got to a bit that I felt was strategic enough. And also if I got too high in why, I'd ask myself how, and that kind of brought down the level of kind of understanding, so I could kind of regulate how strategic I was being. And that really helped me. So the why question and that calendar and energy audit were the two things that really transformed my ability to do more strategic thinking.
I'm really interested in what role you played in those meetings. You said you tried to figure that out for yourself. What were some of those roles that you felt you needed to play in various meetings?
A really concrete example was we do a monthly business review, and when we look at the whole of technology. And I had grown up through the kind of almost like the sort of ranks of the company. So I had inherited teams, inherited things, and I felt like it was on my shoulders to make sure this monthly business review went well. When the information was there, everyone knew where they needed to be. I created the deck. I helped people massage their stuff into the right kind of format. Then when I audited myself on this, actually my role there was to consume the information, was to be the person that they would talk to and help me understand what was there. And so I sat down with the team and flipped it and said, I should be the one that's kind of sitting there consuming this. So I'm going to stop making the deck. I'm going to stop putting the prep meetings in. I think it's an expectation you should have, that you'll inform me in that meeting. I can come along and I can just listen and I'll take notes myself. And so the whole prep work for that meeting, as an example, disappeared from my calendar. The whole stress, the whole energy levels of getting ready for it went. And I could then move into a position where I was more consumer of information. Instead of the provider, I turned into the consumer.
Cool. Robert, how do you help your managers make time to think strategically, or how do you do it yourself?
Yeah, I like the duality of that question, because like I think the way you help your leaders do it is you pattern it, and so believe it or not, I have no meeting Fridays, which is like almost unheard of. But like I will take it if there's a tactical thing or a fire to fight. Sure, I will take it, but no planned things, no scheduled recurring things on Fridays. Also, like the calendar audit thing, no more back to back. Then pick a number. 2 hours straight. Then I need a half-hour window. 3 hours straight. Pick something and then like stick to it. So there's always some space built in. Lastly, super critical. We're mostly a hybrid, remote, global kind of team. Get leadership together in an offsite quarterly. We pull away from our desk, we go to a different space, we get out of our environment, out of our element, forced to do some more free creative thinking and take some individual and collective time in those spaces, I think is super valuable.
Cool. Okay, I'm going to start segueing into questions that are coming up in the Q&A in the chat now. And also I want to take a chance to remind our panelists, you can ask questions too. It would be great if you have questions for each other. The first one that I'll turn to here is, how do you get feedback for yourself on ways to improve leading from your team?
I guess there's two modes for me. One, maybe to start with, like building the trust that feedback is great and building feedback loops. That's certainly one aspect. But I guess there's two levels for me. One is asking lots of what's not working. And that's like the question I use a lot. And that helps people understand. They could kind of explain what's not working rather than say, you're not doing this well. And I think that just opens up conversations. A really good example, recently we were talking about strategy and communication. We were just going to set out our vision. I was asking them what's not working, and they said, we don't understand what you're talking about. We just don't understand the vision. We don't understand the alignment. And so asking questions like what's not working allows that kind of feedback to flow a bit better. And the other one is normalizing feedback and opening up the mistakes that you've made. I find that incredibly powerful, just to kind of acknowledge it and say, listen, I know this isn't going well. I'm struggling with it. Is there anything you can do to help me understand where I'm struggling with it? And those are the two things that I would do.
Okay. Robert, anything in particular you do to make sure you're getting feedback from your folks?
Yeah, a question I like to ask. I mean, I think asking for it, and you have to ask for it repeatedly. You can't just do it once and say anything from anything. It starts to almost be like, Roby, you have to keep asking. And the thing I do like to ask is, is there anything that I'm saying that you don't see me doing? It's like, do the words match the actions? Like, and make sure those results are seen. And so like, that kind of keeps at least me in check. At least that's a question I like to have answered for myself of like, yeah, am I doing and not just saying? That's kind of how I look at it.
Elliot, what about you? What do you do to get feedback?
I think, yeah, the things these guys have mentioned for sure. Another thing too is like owning a mistake publicly when it does happen. Like, I think it's pretty big that when people realize like, oh, just you're human. It's a pretty big moment. There's actually a thing I stole from Fellow and like the app where it was like, there's questions you can ask in one-on-ones to spice it up. And I think one of them was, what's something you don't want to tell me, but you think I probably should know? And then like, I've asked that one a few times in a few meetings and it gets a little uncomfortable. So you have to do that whole, like, embrace the moment of quiet when they're just like, oh gosh, what's he? And then sometimes something does come out of that. And it's like, oh, wow, I had no idea I was doing that. And then, admitting it and then, then being receptive. And then, similar to what Robert said, like, follow up and be like, hey, I'm trying better to make space for you to speak. Like, there was a while where I would just like talk and then not listen enough. Probably still do. But, there's that acronym, like, wait, like, why am I talking? Once I heard that, I started to internalize it. And it's pretty amazing. We can just like sit back, listen to the people in the room speak. And then, someone else probably will say what you're thinking. You don't need to say it as like a senior, like, leader. Let the other people show that and then let them get that trust. So that was like just one thing where I got that feedback and, following up like, hey, I'm trying this. Am I doing an okay job? And I'm lucky that the people I have, generally will be very honest with me, which is nice.
Okay. A reminder to folks, if you have a question, please add it in the Q&A or in the chat. I'll try to scan both. The next one is, let's see if I can paraphrase this. Do you have a playbook for making decisions when there are a lot of opinions? how do you bring alignment on a decision?
I've struggled with this a lot. I think I don't think there's a framework I would use, but one thing that's worked particularly well, most of the time anyway, is just naming a person that's going to make the decision and naming the decision that's going to be made. Those two actions in themselves give enough clarity. And I found when I've done that, you can almost like see people relaxing, thinking, well, I can just give my opinion now. I don't need to worry about whether it's on me, whether we make the right decision or the wrong decision. The process will take care of itself. And so we'll do a thing where we'll name the decision, we'll name the almost like the collaborators for that, the people that are expected to give the most amount of input. And we'll allow them to kind of go through a few cycles, but there'll be a named decision maker at the end of it. We'll say, given all the information, I'm going to make this decision. And that's how it's kind of going to go from there. So just naming what decision you're trying to make and the person is incredibly powerful, in my opinion, to get kind of that unstuck. Having said that, one thing I will say, naming the person can often be really tricky. Like trying to find the right person to make the decision is like the toughest bit of that bit.
Robert or Elliot, any techniques you have when there are differing opinions and you need to bring alignment to a decision?
Yeah, I think I haven't actually tried what Jamie recommended. That sounds, I kind of like that. I think I might give it a shot. I think it's a little cliche, but the whole pros and cons list of each kind of idea, and then having the room kind of be like, okay, well, not only pros and cons, but, risks and mitigations of a decision. Like, I think, technical teams would do like technical design reviews. You can kind of apply that concept to other things and be like, what are you considering? What's the good or the bad? What are the risks? Do we have mitigations? Do the mitigations, like, are they more work than the thing we're trying to do in the first place? So like a bunch of questions you can ask there. And if you don't necessarily have a key decision maker, sometimes the options that you have will very slowly like whittle down. You're like, hey, like, it really is one of these, and let's pick one. We have our thought process documented. We know why we're going this way. If we need to pivot, we'll pivot. If we make a mistake, hey, we're going to learn. And that's just like the cost of what we're doing. Like we're still an evolving and learning team. So yeah, that's kind of what I've done in the past.
Yeah, I think oftentimes looking for any more context or information that can guide the decision, like it's we can take on more risk here, or we can't, or we can iterate here and deliver here more quickly, or we can't, or we need this to be, can we get more short-term results out of one or the other, or that's too short-sighted, we need to look for is there any additional context or information to be added to potentially pare down the misalignment or the amount of opinions or options that are on the table. Like often there is a missing piece that can kind of help formulate that alignment a little better. Not always, but that can be one way to approach it. I have taken the approach, and I also agree of like, it should be clear before the decision is made is like, who is in charge of making the decision? Whether that's the leader or it's some person who's running that initiative, project, whatever it is, that being framed and set up ahead of time can solve a lot of be proactive about this instead of having to be reactive. I totally agree.
Okay, this next question is phrased in a way that makes me think it's a manager who's in this situation. So it says, how do you manage understaffed teams and keep their motivation while delivering the expectations of top leadership? So maybe let me tweak this a little bit and say, if there's a manager on your team who is in this situation, a manager who feels like their team is understaffed and they're struggling to deliver on your expectations, how would you work with that manager, or what would you want that manager to do or tell you?
For me, I think I'd probably start with, so there's a framework, I think it's called the accountability ladder. And there's an element right in the middle of that, where you kind of acknowledge the situation, and even in kind of the way the questions pose it, it feels like this person has said, I'm just going to acknowledge that we're in a situation where we don't have the people we need to meet the expectations. So I think just acknowledging that and making sure that they know and you know it's kind of a fact, and you can kind of move on from that. I think the next stage for me, I don't know, I think it would probably be looking at what the expectations are. Like, do we need to adjust the expectations rather than worry about the kind of understaffing of the team? Is that the problem? When we say understaffing the team, is it a particular skill set that they need that's not there? I think we probably just start to explore both sides of the expectation. What do they think the expectation is? Can we adjust that? And looking at how they've come to the conclusion of the kind of understaffing. I think those are the two things I'd look at.
Yeah, this is actually a thing that we have a few smaller teams that, you know, are one's not directly under me, but another one that is. I think one of the first things is, you know, are they delivering what's reasonable considering like where they're at? And one thing that's really important that I found is just appreciation. Like the whole gratitude thing is huge. So like if they are understaffed, they're probably really stressed. And if they've got like, you know, maybe they only have one of each discipline to deliver a feature, like, you know, say like a full stack kind of team, and only one person, that means if you get sick, you go on vacation, you have like, you know, some family, something you have to take care of, like, you know, you kind of feel like you're leaving the team out, like to, you know, fend for themselves. And that's, doesn't feel good. So I think like acknowledging it is definitely huge. And then working to be like, okay, well, like what Jamie said, like, do we need to then look at the expectations? You know, the other side of like, if they're not even trying and they're not like engaged and like, there's just other things going on, there's personality issues. You know, I'd be like, is this even the right group to have as a team to accomplish what's in front of them? And then kind of take it from that angle as well.
Yeah, I think, you know, very much looking at like, hey, you know, there's too much to do. Okay, well, do we at least have the right prioritization in order? We're like tackling the most important, the most impactful things first, because then as you start to make progress on it, you say, oh, at least we're adding as much value as we possibly can. We're doing as much as we possibly can do, so we're making sure we know what the most important stuff is. And again, then as people on the team, again, it's the acknowledging, appreciating, hey, still having impact, even though you feel a little drowning, a little behind, too much backlog, whatever else. But like, good results are still coming. Good impact is still being had. You know, things are still moving forward, even though maybe not as forward or as much as we would like to see.
Okay. So I know we're getting very close to time. Let me just ask, do any of our panelists have a question that you would like to hear other folks talk about?
I've got one. If you were to go back to the first day you started managing managers, knowing what you know now, what would you tell them or tell you?
For me, and again, it's one of the mistakes that I made, I would say lean into the role, lean into your leadership ability and capability. I was one of the people who was looking for the escape hatch or whatever, of like, I will do this, but if it doesn't, please. And if you've always got the kind of like one foot on one side and one on the other, it's always going to kind of look back or doubting yourself, like, oh, I should just be going back doing that other thing. Like, so if you're going to focus in a leadership space, focus on leadership skills and how to promote yourself as a leader, not like, well, how do I make sure I'm still technical enough so I can go back and do the other thing if I want to? Like, I think there's a big trap there and a lot of like wasted cycles if you're in that dual mindset. That was a mistake I made and encourage other leaders not to do, especially if they're transitioning from a technical role to a leadership role.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. I think I definitely struggled a lot at each level, you know, as I progressed through technical leadership, kind of knowing kind of when to stop, be like, hey, like, that's a really interesting problem. I would love to solve it. Like my brain starts thinking about solutions, but that's your position. My job is to support you. Like, what do you need? I think if I could go back and tell myself, it would probably be to say, hey, like, maybe let go a little like earlier and then watch what they do and then coach. set up guardrails, and then, use your skill to like, create copies of yourself throughout the organization who can execute like you can, instead of focusing on being the person who's always executing.
I want to thank you so much, Robert, Jamie, Elliot, for sharing your experiences. Thanks to everybody out there who is listening and asking questions and typing things in the chat. I really appreciate it, and it was delightful to talk to you all today.